First of all, thank you so much to everyone for coming to this event this evening. I know it's kind of hibernation season and a little bit tricky to drag yourself out of your house, but we're very grateful to have you. Welcome to the political power of music, where we'll be asking, can music still save us? And exploring the kind of power of musicians in the political space. I'm Izzy, for those of you who don't know, I am the founder of Sexy Climate Change. It is a climate podcast, a meme page, and I guess a community, because people turn up for things like this, looking at the climate crisis and the intersection of climate and culture, and trying to make it fun and sexy and interesting, because I feel like sometimes there's a bit of a sigh when you start to talk about climate. People tap out and they don't really want to listen. We're doing this event in collaboration with Music Players Emergency, and that's Ella, so I'll let you introduce Music Players Emergency.
Hi, I'm Ella. I'm the campaigns manager of Music Players Emergency. We are a registered charity working at the intersection of music and climate action, but more recently we're turning our focus to general themes of unity, togetherness, grassroots scenes, and how we can kind of foster grassroots action to benefit the wider community. But yeah, we love putting on events that bring people together and kind of harnessing the power and the feeling of music for collective joy and action.
And then we're also joined by Gary and Dave. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves to the audience so I don't butcher.
Dave Randall, I'm a musician and the author of the book about music and politics, the second edition of which has just come out. And it's for sale over there. And look, since I'm on the subject, I'm really sorry, it's $16.99. I discovered that when you're an author, you don't actually get to set the price. It's a bit expensive, right? But if you do decide to buy it, if you do, I'm not assuming everyone will, but if you do, you are really supporting a really good independent bookshop, Households, who are selling it tonight, and a good independent publisher, Press. But apologies that it's a lot of your hard-earned dough.
I'm Gary. That's what the interest is actually.
Hey, there you go. You can hear me and I can hear me. Are we working now? Are we there? Are we in there? Swell. Sorry, technology. Anyway, I'm Gary. I'm a drummer from the band The Liberties. I also have my own record label, 25 Hackney Store. I'm the ambassador of a charity called Stop Hate UK. We're trying to increase the amount of information and education needed to stop all of the heightened levels of intolerance happening around the country. We've been working with those guys now for about 7 years. I'm also the ambassador of a charity called Restore the Music, which is trying to raise as much funding as possible for inner city schools so that they can actually have much needed education with reference to music and creativity. As we all know, the creativity in music is pretty much what makes the world go round and what makes a well-rounded individual. And there's some other stuff as well.
Okay, so part of the description of the event asks the question, can music still save us? I was wondering what that question means to each of you. Like, what do you think we need saving from, and do you think music can still save us? But we'll explore it a bit more.
All right, I'll jump in first, if that's all right. Music on its own could never save us. Of course it could. It would be naive to suggest that it could. Things that actually change the world include ordinary people demanding proper political representation, people who are willing to take to the streets for a political campaign or political cause, people becoming willing to go on strike with political demands. Those are the sorts of things that actually change the world. I think we need to be serious now about the question of how we change the world. But of course, music and culture can make those things more or less likely to happen. It does. It's an important way that people can gain courage and so on. There's a quote that I'd like to read out, if that's okay. One of the most important music-led political campaigns in this country, in living memory, I mean, not for most people in this room, not really for me either, because it reached its peak in the late 70s, but there was a campaign called Rock Against Racism. You'll know all about this through your work, of course. And one of the founders, David Widgery, he said this about the experience. I wanted to read this quote out. I'm pleased I had the opportunity. Our experience taught us a golden political rule. How people find their pleasure, entertainment and celebration is also how they find their sexual identity, their political courage and their strength to change. And therefore, when we talk about music, we're not just talking about entertainment or commerce. We're actually talking about a part of the process by which we become fully human. And I would argue, a part of the process, sometimes, by which we forget our humanity. There is nothing inherently and automatically progressive about music. Music and all of culture is politically contested, and that has been true throughout history and across cultures.
God damn. I would agree with that, but I think there's also a caveat that can be added to that, which is with reference to what's the terminology I'm looking for? Who controls the narrative? That's what it really comes down to. It really comes down to who controls the narrative. There's a reason why Tony Blair decided to use D-Ream. What's the track again? Things can only get better. It wasn't because it just had the hook.
Look at the scientist on keyboards.
Yes,
Brian Cox.
Brian Cox, yeah. There's a reason why he chose that track, and it wasn't just because it had the hook in there, things could only get better. It was because the track was listened to by millions of people around the country. It was an automatic in. It was an automatic in so that he could actually become one of the people with reference to that track and that particular hook. And that is why so many politicians around the world try to hook onto different aspects of culture, try to hook onto, you know, remember there was a whole thing about like Rishi Sunak or Adidas. They did that thing, trying to hook onto culture to state that he was one of the people. You know, they'll try to manipulate people's minds with reference to aligning themselves to a particular form of music, because there's definitely a demographic of people who would actually listen to that music, and they would then become part and parcel of that demographic via creative means. So, you know, the overall problem that we have right now is the fact that the wrong people are controlling the narrative with reference to what we actually listen to. You know, that comes down to the record labels as well, and politicians. They're trying to control the narrative. You know, when I was at the march, was it last weekend or the weekend beforehand, with the Palestine march with Robert Del Naga, really good friend, because we've been to a few marches together, and he understands the importance of music, because it isn't just the music per se, it's what the music actually stands for. The music stands as a binding force within people, and the powers that be understand just how important we are as an ensemble, for want of a better term, as opposed to how important that one particular piece of music is. So it's extremely important because it binds us together. I bet there's a group of people in here that all listen to the same music. If we started singing one particular song, everybody would join in. You know, it morphs us together. It's not just about the music, it's about the binding of the senses together, the emotional content that it creates between us all. So it is extremely important, and sometimes it gets overlooked. I remember, I've been going for ages. I remember when I first started performing, and when people started coming to shows, and the shows bigger and bigger, I was just like, what the hell are people coming and seeing this for time and time again? And it wasn't until people came up to me and started utilizing phrases like, your music saved my life. It helped me out through the hardest times that I've ever had in my entire life. I wouldn't be the person I am today without the music that you perform. And even then, at that particular point in time, I kind of just smiled and nodded and went, yeah, But it's true, because we can all remember that one piece of music. Everybody, if you can't remember a piece of music, keep your hand down. But if you do, do you remember that piece of music that you were having the worst time in your life? And this piece of music comes on, and you heard it, and it reminds you of that period of time, and it reminds you how you felt at that point in time, and it reminds you of how you actually moved forward. Who doesn't remember that? Shit, it's only me. Yeah. And we all do. Everybody does. Everybody probably didn't understand why I did it. Everybody has that piece of music. Got you through that particular moment in time. So it's restorative, it's communicative, it's binding, it's almost the heartbeat of any community. And those communities that are bound by music are stronger together and are actually then able to make the type of changes that we actually need moving forward politically or socio-economically.
Amazing. I'm thinking on humanity and process, some of the things that were brought up. I think for me, in a time of AI playlists, made, with songs on them by AI bands that, make millions of streams that put money into AI weaponry. I feel like, it's that shred of humanity that you get when you're making music with people, when you're enjoying music with people. It's an incredibly vulnerable place to put yourself in, and I think that is at the core of why it means so much to so many of us, because it's a chance to bare our soul around people. It's a chance to connect with people in fandom, in community, in the live spaces we go to, and breathe and connect with each other. So yeah, I think, I completely agree. Music is a tool. It's not the saving force, but what a tool it is to get us there.
Yeah, and I completely agree with a lot of what you both said, but I just underline what Ella just said about the importance of the communities created by music. My belief is that is becoming increasingly important for people, possibly because in lots of ways we're becoming more and more kind of atomised. And indeed lonely. Lots of people think that loneliness is becoming a really serious problem for all age groups, not just for older people. Social media appears to provide a solution to that. We can be connected to all these people, but actually it's so low bandwidth, the quality of those relationships. And instead, of course, we're just sucked into this attention economy that robs us of our time and doesn't leave us with much time for quality connection. We know that, and I think that's why we keep showing up for live music events in particular. The popularity of live music events is only going up and up. At all levels, everything from Taylor Swift being the first artist to earn more than $2 billion on the tour with the Eras tour, right through to local kind of blues jams, on a Monday night, which are packed. I speak from experience. I was at one in Bristol last week. So I think it's incredibly important when it comes to community, but this question of who controls the narrative, I'd like to come back to if we get the chance, because I think that's key.
Yeah, I think that was all super interesting, and it kind of made me think of why we even put this event on. So Adam and I were talking about this event during summer, and I think this summer was a real moment of seeing the suppression of artists and their politics. And I was wondering, obviously, we all know the kind of genocidal context of that, but do you think that there's sort of anything else that's really led to this suppression of artists' voices? Do you think it's an element of the commercialisation of music? I wonder, because obviously, Gary, you were at Glastonbury, you did hold up a flag. What was that moment like?
It was brief. I got whooped from the BBC straight away. For me, it was just another moment of communication. But it was a much more personal level of communication. It was me communicating how I felt about a particular subject matter. Which I've done for the majority of the shows that we've performed, and I will always say something, take out a flag, wear a something in support of that particular cause regarding Palestine. But there's been a few shows. I mean, I remember the one surprising one was Dublin this year. I wore it up, I said Free Palestine, and I got the most boos ever in Dublin, of all places. It was that bad that the following day in Belfast, a bunch of people came backstage to apologise for the audience in Belfast. Same thing happened in Halifax and Leeds, but then I was told that don't be surprised by that because the top goal scorer for the Leeds football team is Israeli. So I was like, oh, I understand. I get it. Which then begs the question of what's people's motivations. We then go to social media and the amount of inflammatory nonsense that I've received regarding my persuasion on that particular subject matter. I mean, it's not huge, but a lot of it, it can only be taken personally to a degree until you just see enough of anything like that. I already couldn't get this anymore, which is where I am right now. But I do remember walking past somebody after a show and them saying, I actually came here just to listen to music. I don't really care about your political persuasion. And I just thought, well, that's coming from a point of view of like you being privileged. That's a privileged point of view. And all music, regardless of what you think about it, it's political. You could be listening to Bob Marley. Bob Marley is ridiculously political. Redemption Song is a political song. Everything that he did was religiously or politically orientated. Woody Guthrie, political as well. Everything he did was about the poor people coming out of oppression in America. There's everything. There can be political strands through most music, even if we're talking about the love between people. That love can then be utilized in a particular political sense, which then goes back to why do people feel so inflamed about people being, in their mind, overly political on stage. But in actuality, what you actually have is just the opportunity to actually see that person for whom they are as at that particular moment in time. We played, sorry, do go on. We played, what's it called? The Eden Project this year. And that was a doozy as well, because we got announced to play the Eden Project a week after Kneecap got pulled from the Eden Project. And I was driving on the way down to Margate to start working with another band, and I looked at the website, and I pulled over to a truck stop, a service station. I call it a truck stop. I pulled over to a service station, bought myself a drink, went to the bathroom, sat down in the car, and then re-looked at the roster, the schedule for the shows, and then I saw that the bands supporting us were the same bands that would have been supporting me. Frank Turner and somebody else. And I was like, hold on a second. That's way too much of a coinkydink. But apparently it was a coincidence, or as I prefer to call it, a coinkydink, in that we had actually been booked to play the show like 2 months beforehand. They just had our managements. I'm not going to say anything. Our management had just not promoted the show prior to. But then it just placed further attention on us with reference to the timing of our announcement. So then I was just like, well, regardless of the timing, I actually don't feel very comfortable with the ideology of us actually playing the show in the same space after Kneecap have just been pulled because of their political and their ideological beliefs. I unfortunately was shouted down by managements and a few other people, and we ended up playing the show anyway because it's we are a democracy. I didn't take any money.
Yeah, this idea that musicians should be political. I mean, of course, the absence of politics is itself a political choice with political ramifications, particularly when some serious events are going on. So that's. And you often hear this from people who basically disagree with you, and sometimes don't have the honesty, the gumption, the courage to admit that they disagree with you. So that's why people say, don't get political, please, is because they disagree with what you're saying. I sometimes wonder, because you're right about those artists you mentioned, it's not only them, is it? I mean, Beethoven's Third Symphony was inspired by the revolutionary movements of the time, so much so that famously he had to scribble out the dedication to Napoleon, because by the time he finished the symphony, Napoleon had declared himself emperor and kind of, completely gone against the democratic aims of the revolutionary period at the time. Would they say to Picasso, one of his most famous paintings, the Guernica, about the fascist bombing, the Nazi bombing of that small town in Spain, would they say that to Picasso? It should be political. I mean, quite often you hear it said, I think, quite often you hear it said to African American artists. I think quite often there's at least a tinge of racism here. Your job is to entertain us, not to have an opinion. Quite often that's the context in which people say that. So that's important. To go back, can I briefly talk about kneecap? Because let's be clear, that is one of the most significant kind of stories of recent weeks and months. The gig where they are alleged to have committed a terrorist offence. Maybe some of you were too. Yeah, the Kentish Town Forum. I can tell you this, if they waved the Hezbollah flag, then Hezbollah, for those who don't know, is a Lebanese political organisation. They run much of the south of Lebanon, and they've gone to war with Israel more than once. Now, if they waved the Hezbollah flag, then I can tell you, because I was there, that no one in the audience seemed bothered or noticed, one or the other, or both. Either they didn't notice or they weren't bothered, because there were no complaints. People clapped, they went off, Cologne of Faith came on, everybody clapped Cologne of Faith, and then it was Paul Weller, and then it was Brian was screaming, and then we all went home happy. The next day there were no complaints, the next week there were no complaints, the next month there were no complaints. It wasn't until images of kneecap criticising Israel, calling out the fact that a genocide is going on in Gaza, it wasn't until they played Coachella in America and video of them saying those things on stage at Coachella started to really do the rounds online, only then did somebody decide to go trawling through recent live footage looking for a reason to silence them, a reason to shut them up, a reason to stop them from saying the completely legitimate point that they believe that this is genocide that's going on. Now, of course, the Metropolitan Police dutifully took up the case. But then the most interesting thing, to go back to who controls the narrative, the most interesting thing for me is that, of course, we now know that then some of the big cheeses of the British music industry weighed in against kneecap. There was the secret letter sent to the Ibises trying to get them cancelled for Glastonbury. We know this because of a leak from Glastonbury. And that list of 30 or so music executives was very revealing. I've worked closely with at least two of them. And indeed, I've had disagreements on the question of Palestine with one of them on that list. So for me, it was quite revealing. It was quite almost vindicating or reassuring or something. It's like, okay, I didn't imagine it. I was kind of victimised for the politics I was expressing there. And so it just goes to show that people with completely different views to, I guess, those of us on this panel, and probably most of you in the room, also believe in the importance, the political importance of music, and are also trying hard to control the narrative. And actually they have on their side immense wealth and power. So we have to talk seriously about strategy and tactics when we talk about trying to harness the political power of culture in order to win a better world.
And very quickly, going back to the kneecap again, when they finally brought the case up against kneecap, it wasn't even for what happened at Brixton Academy. It was for what they said at a show in September 2023. They went back in time and utilised the fact that what's the lead singer's name? I can't remember. So the only good Israeli is a good Israeli. And that was said in September 2023. At which, at that point in time, when they could have actually acted upon it, they didn't. Because who cared at that point in time? Because who would kneecap in September of 2023? Kneecap would anybody. So they didn't care. Even though...
Sorry to interrupt you, but did they definitely say that?
Yeah.
Because that, okay, well that's disappointing, but okay.
Oh, disappointing, yes. But it's arguably disappointing. We can argue for us about that. It's arguably disappointing.
I didn't know they'd said that. Okay.
I find the kneecap story incredibly interesting, and I mean, I have so much respect for them for using their platform tirelessly to advocate for the things that mean so much to them. You know, even with all of, you know, what feels like the entire music industry against them in some senses. I think the open letter was incredibly powerful, where artists actually stood in solidarity. I think still there needs to be more strategy and more collective action within the kind of music industry and artists in this moment of boycotting festivals. It's difficult, isn't it? Because I think so many artists are put in a difficult position where you're thinking of your income, you're thinking about boycotting, and I think there are kind of things that, like Ravers Against Palestine, for example, have set up like funds to subsidise people's lost income, and I think Kneecap is sort of it's been amazing. I feel like it's fueled such incredible conversation and action and awareness, and now we need to take that energy into tangible collective thought and action, strategy and infrastructure to continue to support people to speak up in what is an incredibly inequitable, incredibly difficult music industry, to sustain yourself as an artist at the level maybe Kneecap were when they were beginning, you know, getting a Coachella set, maybe the first year of big festival touring, getting their first televised Glastonbury set. You know, it's amazing now that they're sustaining income, but it's not easy for people, so yeah.
It's very quickly, all will be a lot more easily achievable than Ireland, because Ireland obviously is just bringing about like the minimum wage for musicians.
I really like, because Ella makes a really important point about how do we support musicians who choose to heed the calls from Palestinian civil society for a cultural boycott. And I just want to say that I actually took a motion to the Musicians' Union about 15 years ago, and it was really softly worded. I said, it was the London branch, you know, the branch meeting of the MU, and I said, I propose that the MU puts together a committee to discuss the possibility of defending any member who decides to join the cultural boycott of Israel and, as a consequence, you know, suffers some sort of ill consequence, financial or otherwise. And it was unanimously voted in favour of, so that should go forward from the London Branch Committee to the leadership of the union. And then the General Secretary at the time completely unanimously kicked it out. No way, there's no way we're going to unilaterally take a position on Israel. Forget about it. You know, this is way too controversial. Even though, of course, the MU played a pretty good role during the apartheid era in South Africa. Now, the good news is that 15 years later, unfortunately, it's taken a genocide, but a very similar emergency motion was brought to the AGM of the Musicians' Union this summer and was passed. So finally, the MU's official position is that they will defend people, musicians who choose to join the cultural boycotts of Israel, which I think is a significant step forward.
And I think we've touched a lot on like the power of music and protest. But obviously politics is more than protest, it's also, I mean, I think at its best it's like imagining better futures and engaging people in better futures. I was wondering if you how you feel about the use of music in kind of that as well, because I see it as this two-stream. It needs to hold the line, but it also needs to like kind of posit a future.
All right, I'll jump in. I love that Shambhala Festival has Adventures in Utopia over their main stage. You know, I think that we do need a sober assessment of the challenges that we face, but we also need to get excited about the possibility of change. You know, and sometimes ideas about how society could be can be just that. And for me, the thread that runs through both those conversations is this question of ownership. You know, who owns culture? And I think the more that we can create events that we can feel a sense of ownership over in venues like this that are available for us to do that, And the more that we can take back culture from the private equity firms who kind of now own the likes of Superstruct, who own a whole bunch of festivals across London, and of course Live Nation and so on. The more that we can take, I know that it's difficult for many of the people at Boomtown to sell part of the festival to Live Nation. There's one wonderful representative from the festival here tonight. But they have to make these sorts of difficult decisions to survive sometimes. I mean, I don't know the details of Boomtown, I won't speak for that festival. But it seems to me that the more that we can talk about ways of taking control of culture back, the more we can start to really envisage utopia and a way forward for the whole of society.
I agree, but I also would add another caveat to that as well. Especially if you look at let's take London for instance. London is said to be one of the greatest cities in the entire world. And one of the reasons, well, the main reason why London is amazing is because of you, because of us. We make London amazing. No one else does. The government doesn't do it. The government does is benefit from the works of everybody else. So say for instance, Live Nation comes in, they take over the festival space. The government will reduce funding from things that are working. It only takes one person to go, I've got an idea. That's all it takes, and that spark is begun. And then the people, we rally together, and we do something that is amazing, that actually then moves forward, that eventually then the government will go, that's a bit damn good. Ooh, I wonder how much we can benefit from this. And then they'll try and that will, unfortunately, because we do live in the society that we live in, unfortunately, that will be a continual story. That will continue to happen. The government will always benefit from, and they will always be grabbing. I call it grab ass. They'll just grab ass as much as they possibly can. I'm going to take a little bit of this yogurt. You made this. I'm going to take that. That's good. You know, we're going to continually play grab ass. But the more they play grab ass, the more we go, oh, Jesus Christ, well, that sucks. But oh my God, have you seen this happening over here? This is pretty damn cool. Let's go check this out. They will never dim the light of the people. They never will. They will try to control the narrative as much as they possibly can do and push us in particular directions.
But don't you think that people should try to take, for what it's worth, and I know that the powers of government are limited compared to the kind of private equity firms that I just talked about.
Yes.
But nonetheless, don't you think that people should try to take government? Shouldn't part of our conversation, not necessarily tonight, but shouldn't part of our conversation be, should we back Zach Polanski and the Green Party, or should we back your party?
I just did a meme about it this week, about how it's a mess.
It is a mess. But my point is that I don't think we should give up on the possibility of using government as you know. In fact, I think if we do give up, then we're not in good shape. Because imagine a scenario where you had councils run by people with the sorts of political principles that we agree with, Lambeth Council. So they no longer give Brockwell Park to Field Day, but instead they say we're going to expand the Lambeth Country Fair to 2 weekends. So with a proper budget. So I'm riffing now, but you get my point. The idea is that perhaps we could use government, including local government, to start to regain control of culture.
I completely agree. A perfect example of that for me is going to the Palestine marches, seeing all of the flags and all of the banners around there. I remember going to the first one and just thinking to myself, you know what would be even more effective than seeing the Palestine banners? Showing your support, obviously. But if we all had banners and posters with a picture of Keir Starmer, with "We do not support you," showing as much support as possible, he would actually then see that he's losing the battle against us. There's a reason why whenever a march happens, the numbers as reported by media, are always dwindled. They always report, the reportages is, like I said, the last one they said, I think they said there was like 200,000 people at the last march. There was definitely over 500,000 people there. There was definitely over 500,000 people there. Because what they're actually trying to do is minimize our voices as much as we possibly can do. Because we're not showing any disdain towards them, we're showing disdain towards what's actually happening at this point in time. And all they actually need to do, given that any particular argument, is throw some crumbs in another direction, i.e. kneecap. That was throwing crumbs. That's all it was. Let's have everybody looking over here, because whilst you're looking over here, we're going over here. We're going to do what we have to do over here. And if all of our focus was, as you say, focused entirely on the government, then I think that would be a much more effective methodology of bringing about the change that we want. Let's face it, the government's fucking up. It's fucking up. And they are getting away with it as well. To a degree. To a degree.
Okay. I'm going to let you guys disagree politely. Ella, I have a question for you, because I know that with Music Affairs Emergency you work a lot with artists, and especially younger artists, because I feel like it's really important to note the context that we're in, of artists struggling more and more to make money. Like, I think it's very different from maybe when you guys were younger. Like, I think it's a lot harder to make money as a musician now. I have lots of friends trying and struggling. Do you think that is the main barrier to people kind of picking up the mantle and being very keen to be politically outspoken on stage?
Yeah, I was talking at another panel in Norwich on Friday about this. We got into a really interesting conversation about artists' voices. This is my favourite music industry fact. We had a song that was nominated for a Grammy that year. I made £1,000 in royalties on PRS the whole year. That's not enough to live on for 1 month in London, and that was my whole year's earning. We were touring internationally, we were playing tours, full tours, sold out, and yeah, I made £1,000. So this is a serious issue, this is a real issue, and artists cannot be expected, grassroots artists cannot be expected to act on their own behalf when things are so inequitable and the ground is so loose beneath them. And I think we all have a responsibility in the music industry to build sustainable infrastructure. I keep saying this, but one of the things we do at Music Declares Emergency is we're working with grassroots venues because we think, that is where music starts. That is where, when I was 17, I was going down to the Windmill, the Five Bells, you want to be in music, you just go there and you just surround yourself in it. And if those spaces were political, if those spaces had structures and support and learning and education alongside the music, wouldn't that be so amazing? Those people go into the music industry, or they go into politics, or they go into performing music, and then all of a sudden we're building this actual network of people in the industry who have this kind of confidence and support to speak their mind, speak the kind of language of politics. Because I think at the moment, I even struggle to do it on our band Instagram. I feel like deep cowardice and shame often for not speaking out enough, but it feels so difficult because I can't pay my rent sometimes, and I'm working 2 full-time jobs just to survive in London, and I'm trying my best. I think we need to acknowledge that, because so many artists I know feel like that, and then the artists that don't are so burnt out because they're on the touring, they have to tour 9 months a year just to kind of make the bank account work, and you just see every single time I see a band that I love and respect, like Lamborghini does, so political, so amazing. I think they're the coolest people in the world. We've seen them, from tiny 50 people rooms to, getting the attention they deserve, but it's a lot of work, it's a lot of shows, it really burns you out. So to have the time and the space to reflect and to unwind and to kind of consider how you feel about the world and the steps you can take and the steps you can advise people through the platform, we need to offer that support and that structure from, before the burnout as well. And we have it with our artist outreach, often we get a reply back saying, thank you so much for considering this artist for this campaign, but we've got 7 other charities asking us to do stuff. And yeah, because there's a lot of stuff to be active about at the moment as well, and there's a lot of stuff to be fighting about. So it's also about how we can kind of galvanise the energy of lots of different grassroots organisations and charities to build collective voice, build these moments where we go, let's take the power back, let's, boycott Spotify, let's do this, let's do that, let's do these actual things, because acting alone sometimes as an artist is an incredibly daunting position, but when we stand together, it's so much stronger, so much stronger.
I'm going to ask these guys one more question, and then I'll open the floor to audience questions. So this is your kind of 5-minute warning to start thinking of things to ask them. So my final question to you guys is, you've mentioned earlier, like the power of music, how some things have made you kind of mentioned, feel like the worst time of your life, like it's always me and Steve Nicks having a bit of a cry. But on a positive note, what is one song or album or even artist that has changed your worldview or made you learn more about a topic? Sorry.
I'll jump in with the kind of the thing I mentioned in the book. There was a song by the Special AKA it's called Nelson Mandela, but the chorus is "Free Nelson Mandela," and I heard this when I was a kid at a festival, and I always make the joke, apologies if you heard me do it, but it's true that I had no idea when I heard that who Nelson Mandela was, but I knew by the end of the first chorus that I wanted him to be free. And that did feel like a pivotal moment for me. I was only a kid at the time, but I think an artist who I think had a big impact on me is the American singer-songwriter Arnie DeFranco. I think, a few Arnie fans in. She's consistently exploring politics. I don't always agree with her. I think I'm a bit further to the left than her on some issues, but she's a brilliant artist, brilliant guitarist, fabulous songwriter, and she's been a big source of inspiration.
Just like all hip hop, Public Enemy, like just all like rap. I think the way that like words and worlds can be synthesized, like through like poetry and spoken word. Just like growing up, it was all my dad was playing, and I think I just got this like, it's like anger and frustration, but also just like, imagining futures, and I think that's why it's like one of my favourite genres. Artist-wise, like if it's going to be something like that. I don't know. It's like an energy. It's more like a kind of, when you hear something, you just want to like, I don't know, like rip out your skin. Sorry, such a graphic image. And just kind of like transcend to a space where we're all together. But that's why music is so amazing, isn't it? It's such a beautiful thing.
Well, for me, I grew up in a household that listened to a plethora of music. Sunday mornings, I'd have to go to church, come home from church, tidy my room, make my bed. My dad was very militaristically orientated and check my bed to make sure the bed was flat. We could bounce a coin off it. If you couldn't do that, he'd rip the streets off and make the bed again. And all of his time he was doing that, he was listening to the likes of Bruce Springsteen, Bob Marley, Richard Strauss, Leonard Cohen. I listened to everything from a very young age. And much like most kids who were listening to music at that age, anything your parents kind of listened to, kind of thought was pretty shit. And I thought all of that was terrible, I hated it. But it just got to a point where I heard him play Simon and Garfunkel's America. And I heard that and I listened to those lyrics, and it was when they mentioned the New Jersey Turnpike that I just kind of remembered that journey as a kid. And that really started me on my journey of discovery regarding music. And then after that it went to the likes of Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, Nina Simone as well, Baltimore. All of these tracks that actually break barriers regarding all ideologies of race, all ideologies of convenience. It's just, in short, there's just too many. So I listen to everything.
Is it? I'd love to know yours.
Yeah.
Uno reverse.
I think I'm a big fan of Joan Baez for like kind of all of the work that she did. I think I love Sophie and like the hyperpop world, just for like imagining a new world and really positioning identity in your output. And then I think on that theme, I'm a massive George Michael fan. I love him so much. And I actually really love Outside, which is the song that he did after he was seen having sex outside and cruising, and there was so much kind of publicity trying to shame him for his sexuality, and I think he really got put in this box of how he should feel, and then his response is this like big, amazing camp protest of being like, you're not going to do this to me, and actually I'm going to completely send it. I'm going to wear an LAPD like police uniform and dance in a club with like urinals that are like sparkling, and I just think it's, and like there's the helicopter shots, and it's so funny because you can, I think it's just so clever how he said, I'm not going to feel how you want me to feel, and I'm going to, by him doing that, I think it inspired a lot of people kind of his age and of his era who had so much shame about being gay following the AIDS crisis. I think it's such a like magical piece of work. So I would say Outside. Okay, does anybody have any audience questions? Okay, we've got one. I'm going to give you the mic so that it comes up on the recording.
Firstly, thank you so much for the panel. Super interesting. A lot of what we've discussed about the political power of music, it references back to its experience in physical places amongst other people and communities. I think now more than ever, those types of spaces are under threat. What can we do as punters, but also as those who work in the industry, or maybe further afield those who work in policy, to resist that and to make sure we preserve those spaces and ensure that in-person sense of community is sustained? And that's a question for anyone.
I'm happy to jump in because my eyes right now have fallen on MVT, Music Venue Trust. They have come up with, is there anyone from MVT?
Yeah, they're going to come and do a little...
So, yeah, do you want to come and talk about the levy that, or should I do it on your behalf?
So we have been working for, I think, at least 7 years now. I mean, I recently joined MDT, but the organization has been working for about 7 years. Thank you. The organization has been working for about 7 years to get this grassroots levy pushed. So essentially the idea is that any ticket sold at a stadium or arena show, £1 from that ticket would go towards a fund that would sustain the grassroots sector. So venues, artists, promoters, anyone working within the grassroots space will be able to access that support. It would be to fund infrastructure in the venues for accommodation for artists, for transportation for artists as well, solar panels for the venues. We have a sister charity, MVP, that has bought several venues and taken them out of a really precarious situation where their leases and their rent are going up, you know, at incredible rates every year, every 5 years or whatever it is. And now these venues are in positions where they're secure. They can look at improving their infrastructure. They can look at bringing in new people in their teams. They can look at how to buy new equipment, new PA systems, whatever it is, but just taking that strain of what is our lease going to look like when we have to renew next time? Is a developer going to come in and buy this property and then push us out? All of those stresses have been taken off those venues that are now under the ownership of music venue properties. So these are the kinds of schemes that we're looking to put in place to just secure the grassroots industry and to make it so that all of us in the room can keep going to the venues that we love and not feel like, I mean, Pickle Factory down the street was closed, and that was like an incredible institution. I live down the road from here. That was a space that I would go to regularly, and it's gone. It's hopefully coming back, but the idea is to have this fund that is going to, one, be providing emergency relief to venues that are in crisis in the moment and need funds to do whatever it is, whether it's pay their PA PRS fees or whatever it may be, but also to be able to build up that infrastructure and those resources that will make the industry sustainable long term. So it's not just about fighting fires and giving people emergency relief funding, it's about actually creating a sustainable industry long term. And hopefully the goal is that in 10, 15, 20 years, MPT doesn't need to exist anymore. That's something that we talk about a lot.
We need to make sure that the government makes it compulsory rather than discretionary.
Well, our hope is to have a voluntary levy. We would like to be able to get the whole industry signed on, the big promoters signed on, so that...
Is there any update from Live Nation? Because they sort of insinuated that they were going to do something, but that hasn't obviously happened, has it?
Things are looking good. Basically, I mean, the government has said by December, if 50% of next year's tickets don't have the levy on, they're going to do a statutory levy. We don't want that because it means, something that could take a year will end up taking 5 years. And then, who knows, with government changes, every time we breathe, there's a new government.
It takes it out of the industry's hands.
Yeah, exactly. It takes it out of the industry's hands and it just prolongs what needs to be done, and it just pushes it further and further down the line. So the hope is to have a voluntary levy so that the industry can control the funds, so that we know we're doing the work, we know where it needs to go, where these funds need to go, and the hope is to have a voluntary levy. But government has said if we don't reach that 50%, it will be a statutory levy. We'll see.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that with us. I think this is. Oh yes, sorry. I think this is a good moment for us to also highlight the Good Law Project. They are sat over here, and they are one of the organisations that the proceeds from tonight are going to alongside Medical Aid Palestine. So I'm going to run a mic over to them so they can tell you more about themselves. But they will also be, these orgs will be here to chat to when we end the panel.
Thank you so much. Hi everyone, my name is Suchi and this is Eliza. We're from Good Law Project. So we're a non-profit that works to use the law for good, which basically means holding people and organisations in power to account for all of their dodgy dealings, whether that means we're fighting to defend our protest rights, trans rights, fighting against the far right in general, a lot of rights that we're working on. Thank you so much for having us. We're very happy for people to come and chat to us after. In fact, we would love that. We have a bunch of different ways you can get involved right now on your phone, and also chat to you about some of the stuff we're working on. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm just slightly conscious of time because as well as these guys, we have free drinks from Good Rays. They're a CBD brand who are one of our drink sponsors tonight, and also some free beers for you guys because now we're moving into more of the mingling and DJ section of the event. So we have, is Nonny here?
The DJ?
Yeah.
She's just outside.
Okay, actually we have Kate from Houseman's Books, who's my magical assistant. I was going to get them to tell them you about.
I can grab them.
Okay. Maybe we'll take one more question if anyone has one more question. Yeah? Go for it. I'll run this over.
It's definitely not as complex, or it's more general just from all of you. But what is the basis of your own integrity? Because obviously, I assume we've all come to this occasion tonight because we're all in a similar sort of sphere. But I want to know the place that you got to today. What is the basis of your integrity? Yeah, that's it.
That's such an amazing question to consider often, I think. I don't know how you can suffer in this world and not want to support other people. I don't know, maybe, I mean, that goes to show people in power, critical suffering, the immense privilege. there. Maybe the lack of suffering as well. But yeah, I just, you know, I have people I love who have been hurt in so many ways by the system we live in, including myself, because, you know, you've got to love yourself in this world as well, because everything tries to make you not. Yeah, I think that's where political and, like, just, you know, empathy comes from as well, like political integrity and empathy. I just don't understand how people can not have it. It really kind of makes my head spin.
And from my own point of view, if I start talking about the reason I set my record label back in like 2011, that's primarily because I was kind of like disenchanted by the direction of the industry within its entirety. In that it was trying so hard to direct people within particular, and utilizing particular methodologies to get people to buy certain themes of music. Coming out of the indie scene, we were briefly talking about beforehand, coming out of the indie scene, it would skate to the likes of Adele and Lady Hawk and so forth. And if you weren't part and parcel of that direction, you kind of got left on the wayside. So you weren't getting the support that you particularly needed, because the industry decided at that point in time that whatever your creativity not that it wasn't needed, it had its place, obviously it had its place, but it wasn't going to get the support that it actually needed. It wasn't. They had the monster around, and this was the direction they were going in. And I started my label because I was like, that's absolute nonsense. There were so many different artists out there who were just not getting the support that they needed. And so I've been spending my own money for God knows how long now. I'm not seeing a damn penny back from it. And it's driving me up a freaking wall, but I just wanted to support as many artists as I possibly could do. A prime example of this would be, say for instance, if you were 16, 17 years old, you started a band with your friends at school or college or wherever, you practiced in your dad's garage or at school or in a little studio somewhere, you managed to start playing some of your first gigs, all of your friends would then turn up, and you have a great time, and everyone's having a great time together, and it's all fun. And then somebody from a record label turns up and goes, oh my goodness, look how many people there, this band's really good. I think I might try and sign them. So we then go forward and we try to sign this band, but automatically changes the dynamic of the relationship with the people together. It then becomes business. We then start looking at each other in a completely different guise, because it's about the monetization, it's about the economics of what we can actually get out of that creative endeavor at a particular point in time. So you could be 16, 17 years old, sign your deal with say for instance, a major, go on tour for 2 years, not recoup, not be able to pay any of the advance back, get dropped by the label, and be redundant before you're 20 years old, which is absolutely ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Where is the support? And I think that's one of the major things that we were talking about beforehand. The industry does need to kind of like collate together and support itself in order to actually move forward, as you pointed out regarding music venue choice. We do need to support each other, but we also need to look at the broader picture as well and make sure that there is support from everybody involved, from the listener. People have often said to me, I wish I was a musician. I'm like, you don't need to be a musician. Just because you're not a musician, that doesn't mean you don't love music any less than I do. In some cases, you love music more than I do. You have a greater understanding of music than I will. So I think generally it's about community. I think we have to have a greater understanding of what the community is that we are all part of, in order for us to actually then move forward together. Because the last thing anybody in the world wants is less music.
Okay, on the topic of that, I'm gonna get the DJs to introduce themselves so that we have some music. I met these guys in the summer at Climate Live, which is like a youth climate outreach that happens at festivals, and I thought it'd be great to have them today. So, introduce yourselves.
So I'm Noni, and this is Shan, and together we are Emma Galdem. We, like last year, we started a community for like BIPOC, ravers, and gender non-conforming women of colour to come and join us on our journey. And what we're doing is basically like platforming those voices in the rave scene. We throw events, we also throw open decks as well to get as many people like as involved as possible. And yeah, that's really what we do. We started it out of kind of like frustration of going to raves and seeing people that didn't look like us on the lineups. So therefore, all of our lineups now are all 100% QT pop with a gender non-conforming DJs, MCs, creatives, and yeah, that's a bit about us. I mean, what are you trying to say? I mean, yeah, Shan's an MC, and I'm like a DJ and producer. Also, Shan is also recently a DJ. She's there. She's going to be doing some tunes tonight, which is really exciting. And yeah, we just do this to like encourage other people to come and join, because this space is for us. It's always been for us, you know. So it was built by us. So yeah, we're just trying to continue and do our thing. And yeah, it's been going well. We love it. Yeah, that's a bit about us.
We're going to be spinning some Afro House, some chill jungle, just to let you guys know, get you guys prepared. But yeah, no, it's been really good, it's been going really well. We're definitely seeing the change in the scene. Obviously, we're a small part of it, but we're hoping as we expand, we can be a bigger part of it, that more black people are going to be on lineups, more people of colour, more women, more gender non-conforming people, because why not? Yeah, excited to spin for you guys tonight.
Okay, so I want to say a final thank you to the panelists for joining us today and for Music Players Emergency for saying yes to this event. We're going to clear this space, but stick around to hear these guys play. Don't disappear just yet. And grab yourself a beer or a drink.
Can I talk a little bit about the quiz?
Oh yeah, we have one more thing, sorry.
So if you'd like to, come and find me in like 20 minutes after I've had my beer. We're going to be, you can record a voice note for the planet that will be potentially turned into a remix or a song next year by one of our artist supporters, and we'd love you to be involved. So come and record a voice note in a lovely meditation room, get a bit cosy, reflect, and you can talk about the things that matter most to you. But yeah, come find me if you want to do that, I'll be back.
Can I quickly say about music? So if anyone's under 30, we want to like overrepresent the underrepresented, so come to me and talk about funding, come on, because all this stuff
Okay, cool. Yeah, now you're free.